Welcome to Could Be Worse, a comedic literary analysis of dystopian novels. Given our primary materials, we will be talking about intense and sometimes upsetting subjects. In this episode, we talk about a lot of violence. Muggings, robbery, conversion therapy, police brutality, prison violence, suicide, sexual assault, and specifically assault of minors. We also swear because that is our wont. We encourage you to interact with that subject matter in whatever way is healthiest for you. Enjoy the show! Sky smoky overhead, all your friends are dead, and your government heads despise you. Members of the church criticize you. Aliens annexed your country. When the rats or the plague or the bread or the circus or the prevailing lack of a meaningful purpose, if injustice or sadness or robots feel like a curse. Books never let you forget. It could be worse. Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Bridget.
Welcome to the Could Be Worse podcast, where we talk about dystopian books. Mostly.
Sometimes we talk about other stuff, but mostly we talk about dystopian books and how, so far, not good.
I mean, I liked Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, Fahrenheit 451 had qualities of it that were good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a strong 50-50 so far. Good writing, bad writing, but we sort of knew that was going to happen going in. Before we get into this week's, Bridget, how are you doing?
I'm good. Just finished up, so obviously we're recording this beforehand, so we're living on a different timeline than you guys. We're from the past. Ooh. So I just finished up a run. I just finished up a run of Sarah DeLap's The Wolves here in Austin. Critically acclaimed.
Hell yeah.
What up?
A whirlwind sequence of performances. Most of them sold out. What up?
Yeah, we sold out the last 3.5 weekends of the 5-week run. It was very cool. We were all very emotional. Cast party is tomorrow night. I am making jell-o shots. I think I'm gonna mix it up and do a rum-based jell-o shot.
Oh shit!
I usually
do
vodka
with that. Jell-o wise.
I think I might do some kind of tropical, either a mango or traditional pineapple.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know they made mango jell-o.
Oh, yeah, they do. I made for my friend's 30th birthday party, because I just had those two kinds of Jell-O around. So I'm like, well, I'll do layered Jell-O shots. I did a layered berry and mango Jell-O shot with whipped cream. Y'all don't know this, but I'm very good at making Jell-O shots.
We are fast gleaning, Bridget. We are picking that up as we go.
But yeah, that's how I've been reading this book and yeah, just living my truth. I have suddenly I have a ton of free time on my hands, so I might pick back up the old Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a group that you're gonna be?
There's a pickup group at one of the game places in my town, but I don't really like how strict Adventurers League is and how it's such quick character creation. I don't really like that.
I'm baffled at the idea of a pickup game.
I know,
Dungeons
right?
And Dragons. I have the barest grasp of the game. I played it one time. I listened to a podcast about it, but that's the extent of my knowledge, which is not enough knowledge to understand how one would just sort of drop in.
Yeah, I would like to do a more solid game. It's a weird thing. So, the cast I was in was a cast full of women, all women, which is great. Love that. Best casts. Always are. And there was this strange thing where I play Dungeons and Dragons. I love Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. And they all know about Dungeons and Dragons. None of them play. Their boyfriends do. Almost every single person in the cast who has a boyfriend, their boyfriend plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Huh.
It was always a weird thing. It's they're like, oh, I can't stand it. My boyfriend loves it.
I'm glad that we got the clarification that, like, it's weird because people that they care about and associate with play Dungeons and Dragons, but they don't, because for a second I was like, I feel like most groups that I'm in, most people don't play Dungeons and Dragons, which is not to disparage the game. So much merit to it. Seems
It's
fun,
so fun
to play.
It's very fun. I have a very good idea for a, I think I'd have to make him a, sorcerer or a wizard, maybe a druid. Either way, I want to make a Peter Pan character that has there's like this, I don't remember what the D&D word is for it, and I feel like I'm gonna get blasted for it, but there's like a Lethifold in Harry Potter, if you are familiar.
That might be slightly deeper than my brain has been in a while. At one point, I probably would have gotten that, but
it was in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Basically, it's a living like shadow creature.
Oh,
it's more complicated than that, but no one's ever gotten close enough to super study one because they just like suffocate people.
Hell yeah, get it, Lethifolds.
So that creature exists in Dungeons and Dragons and in after a fashion. And it's got a neutral alignment, and so I forget which class can like bind things to them as like a familiar. But I want to do Peter Pan, Magic Boy, Chaotic Good, who has a killer shadow.
Fuck yeah!
As his familiar.
Bridget, that's brilliant.
I know.
It's like if you had, like, just an eternal little boy who had the Vashta Nerada as their best friend.
Exactly.
I'm about it.
Yeah. I very much want to play him and him just be like, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want. Bye!
My show's gonna eat you. Cool. Well,
so, Caitlin, what have you been up to?
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah, so your story's a little bit less posy than mine. It's a little bit more...
It's not...
It's posy.
It's positive. It was a very fun experience. I did the 48-hour film festival in Seattle. It was last weekend. This is the weekend before Halloween. I'm gonna need you to do the math yourself on that one, because my brain is just not yet recovered. But yeah, it was really fun. Everyone that was on the project was just great. Met a lot of new people that I really liked, all of them. But it's just a real trial by fire in terms of literally every aspect. And so I stayed up. I got up at like 6:30. Had a day of work, and then I went to the writers' meeting, and then I finished writing the script at about 7 a.m. And then had to be on set because I wasn't gonna act in it, and then they wanted a little bit more of a gender balanced cast, so they asked if I would be in it. And I said yes, and so I had to be ready to film at 8 a.m. So I got a half hour of sleep. And then it was just like shooting and editing the script for time constraints while shooting, because you'd be surprised how much you forget about what is available to you when you're falling asleep writing a script at 7 a.m. And it was just kind of a whirlwind situation. And I didn't sleep again until like after 3 a.m. on Sunday morning. And wait, is that right? I don't know what's real. But yeah, so I filmed my scene, and mine was like, I died first. It's a horror film because it was Halloween themed. I died first, which was great because we had a really incredible makeup person who just had all of the blood ready, and I just got to play around in so much blood, which was a delight. But mine was the messiest death in the whole thing. So I had to like throw myself into the mud and be covered in blood and stuff, and it was out in this like abandoned house in the middle of the woods. I say abandoned, it's like under renovation. But it looks abandoned as fuck. And it was really cool. But there was like one couch in the whole house. And so I finished my scene and they were like, yay, you can sleep finally. But now I was covered in blood and mud, so I had to sleep directly on, like, the underflooring of this renovated house. And eventually I was just like, I have, like, spare clothes. I'll go sleep in my car for a bit. And I let the main point person on the project know, like, hey, if you need me, I'm not leaving. I'm just going to be out in my car sleeping. So just let me know when decisions are made in terms of, like, what I should do. So I go to sleep. I get about 4 or 5 hours. I wake up. I hear voices. I'm like, cool, it's light out. It seems like I can get an update. And I poke my head out of the car. And literally everyone except 4 people are gone, and they are getting into their vehicle.
Bunch of jerks.
And no, they're not jerks. They were all very tired. But I just kind of poked my head back and was like, what's going on? And they just look horrified. And they're like, oh, well, we're gonna do ADR in Seattle at 1 p.m. It was like almost 10. They're like, so, hi, how are you? And then one of them was just like, we definitely weren't sitting there going, I wonder whose car that is. Oh, well, let's pull away. So if I had poked my head out like 30 seconds later, I just would have woken up alone by myself in the woods covered in fake blood and mud.
Natch, as you do.
Yeah. So that was a weird way to start a Sunday. But I think it turned out pretty well. And I get to see the finished product on Monday. So that, but I just haven't gotten my legs back underneath me since that point. And also for whatever reason, I've just been like insane on songwriting recently. So I wrote like 16 in the past 10 days. And I'm just ready to take the world's longest nap, I guess. And I didn't finish reading the book till like half an hour ago. But that means it's really fresh in my mind, and I'm really excited to talk about it.
Hey, me too. Mine was not because I was sleep deprived and was doing a bunch of crazy stuff this weekend, because I wasn't. Mine was because it's a very hard book to read, because you have to well, for me, after a point, there were certain words I got used to. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I still have the window open on my computer of the whole glossary, and I have Command F open so that I can just start typing in the first 3 letters to figure out what things are.
Yeah. I'm gonna say a thing. I do not mean it in any negative way. I don't want to start a fight, Bridget. Bridget, please don't be mad at me. I'm like, hey, well, we just talked about this. Let's go into this sentence I'm about to say with like a, different strokes mindset. I did not have that hard of a time with it as I thought I was gonna. As hard of a time. Sentences. That wasn't very convincing. Okay, I did not have as hard of a time with it as I thought I was going to. Because here's what you do we should probably mention, we read A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. I always say it the wrong way the first time.
You say it fancier than it is.
Okay, now I've already forgotten which way it's supposed to be.
Anthony Burgess.
Anthony Burgess. We read A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. Which is infamously full of a lot of tricky lingo. But I discovered a paradigm really early on that super helps, Bridget. Which is, you are reading a book by evil Russell Brand.
See, that is why I am not as familiar with Russell Brand's comedy. I have listened to a lot less of it than you, to be fair.
Yeah.
You're a big Brand head.
Not always. I am a judicious listener of the comedy of Russell Brand. I would not say that I don't know. I would just like to temper people's idea of how closely I follow the career of Russell Brand. Bedtime Stories, not a great film. But is that really on Russell? These are the questions
Is that the one
haunt
where
me.
they're, like, in a hotel?
Here's the thing.
One?
You said that, and then immediately I was like, well, that's Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And then I was like, shit, most of his movies are in hotels. Because also the spin-off of Forgetting Sarah Marshall took place in a lot of hotel scenarios.
Get him to the Greek?
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh, fuck that movie.
Fun fact, I haven't seen either of those movies.
I think Forgetting Sarah Marshall's really fun. I think there are elements of Get Him to the Greek that could be really fun, but there's this big old scene that's basically like, men getting raped, that's fine. And it's like, no, and immediately I have there's other elements of it that are, like, fucked up. But you get the idea that they're intended to be satirical, so you're like, oh, you just didn't really pull off what you were trying to do there. Sorry, dude. But that particular part is literally just like,
you're
funny,
no
right?
Mary Lou Retton with the landing of that joke, buddy.
Yes, I also get that reference.
Man.
We come from different worlds, and it's fine. Bridget, it's okay. We should not spend this much time talking about Russell Brand. Let's get to the summary of the book.
Okay.
Our book this week tells the story of Alex DeLarge, a young man who terrorizes his fellow citizens with his friends, his gang, his droogs, Dim, Pete, and Georgie. We, the audience, meet him at the opening of a night of violence. Beginning by getting intoxicated on spiked beverages at a milk bar, we follow the four characters as they mug an old man emerging from the local library, rob a store, fight a rival gang, steal a car, invade a young couple's home, rape the wife while restraining the husband, and then burn and sink the car before returning to the milk bar. There, Alex strikes Dim when he mocks a singing woman Alex had been enjoying. Alex openly declares himself the leader of his group, a declaration that Dim and Georgie especially seem unimpressed by. The next morning, Alex decides to skip school, going instead to his local record store to pick up some classical music. There, he encounters two 10-year-old girls who he lures back to his house and allows to use his stereo before he drugs and rapes them to the tune of Beethoven's Ninth. They flee his home, and he eventually sets out for the evening to meet up with his violent friends. Both Dim and Georgie seem set and determined to push back against Alex's declaration of leadership, with Alex responds to with violence. Having put his friends in their place, Alex enjoins them to follow through with their plan of robbing an old woman's house. Once there, Alex goes in by himself, and things go horribly awry. He and the old woman have an altercation, but the cops have already been called, and Dim cracks him across the eyes with a chain, his gang leaving him for the cops to find. The woman ends up dying from her wounds, and 15-year-old Alex is sentenced to 14 years in prison for her murder. Though he dislikes prison, 2 years into his sentence, Alex has set himself a rhythm, ingratiating himself with the prison chaplain in order to appear reformed and enjoying the classical music in the chapel while reading the more violent parts of the Old Testament. His plan to appear the ideal inmate is interrupted by the arrival of a new cellmate who attempts to assault Alex on his first night bunking with him. Alex and the others who share the cell turn on him and beat him, resulting in his death by the following morning. As a result of his cellmate's death, Alex is selected to be the first human guinea pig for the Ludovico technique, an experimental mental reconditioning that will mean he is released in 2 weeks instead of 12 years. Every day, he is given a shot that makes him nauseous and is forced to watch hours of violent footage of rape, murder, torture, and various war crimes. He protests vociferously, especially when he realizes that the soundtrack is Beethoven. He is being conditioned to find his favorite music unbearable. By the end of the 2 weeks, any passing violent or sexual thought causes him incredible pain and nausea. He is released back to his old neighborhood. Upon arrival at his old home, he discovers his parents have leased his room to a lodger. He guilts them furiously as he leaves. Heading for the library to find some way to end his life, he runs into the old man his gang had beaten there 2 years before, and is attacked by the library patrons. When the scene is broken up by two policemen, he is dismayed to discover that he knows them. It's the former leader of his rival gang and his treacherous old friend Dim, who load him into a police car and take him into the countryside, where they viciously assault him and leave him for dead. He wanders to a local home, the location of the home invasion and gang rape he committed years previously, and is helped by the man whose home he destroyed, F. Alexander, a writer and political activist who doesn't recognize him except as the young man whose mind was destroyed by the state. F. Alexander and his political associates explain to Alex their plan to use him to bring down the current administration. When F. Alexander finally recognizes Alex, they accomplish their ends by torturing him with Beethoven, driving him to attempt suicide by leaping from the window. His life is saved, and the ruling party manages to deprogram him, allowing him to once again gleefully fantasize about torment and mayhem. He is cured. Okay. First impressions. Or like just general vibe. Like what'd you feel like having finished it?
So, okay, first of all, I do want to describe the copy of the book that I got. So, books are expansive, and I like to have pages to dog ear, as we have discussed before. So, I got a copy from my local reused bookshop, and it is old as fuck. The latest printing, it says in the front of my book, is January 1972.
Shit.
Yeah,
so
it's super old.
Did you not have the last chapter then?
No.
Fuck, I'm really excited now.
Did you have the last chapter?
Yeah, I did. It totally
I've heard about
changes
the last
it.
chapter.
Okay, can I talk? Okay, you talk about your thing, and then I'm so excited now.
Anyway, it's neon orange.
Hell yeah.
And it has that old book smell, but not like the fun old book smell, but the kind of like...
You're a little bit worried someone peed on or near it?
Maybe a little.
Okay.
But the sides of the pages, and I don't know, I literally cannot tell if this was done intentionally or not, the sides of the pages are orange.
Oh, yeah, that is hard to tell with an old book, huh?
Like, I don't know if it's old, I don't know if it was done on purpose, I don't know if someone who previously owned it thought it would be a fun idea to color it in with orange highlighter.
Does it
But it
match?
doesn't, like, it doesn't bleed onto the pages. I mean, it looks intentional. In a very weird way. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. So my first impression of this book is, I don't particularly like it.
Oh no.
That's it's hard for me to kind of, with this kind of protagonist, here's the thing, it's not that I don't like books where you don't like the protagonist.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books, which I just randomly picked up in a bookstore, no one is any good in it, and the protagonists are just pieces of shit, but they're like... You're like, well, I guess I'm along for the ride with them. And it's insane. It's called Six Sick Hipsters. I do not remember the author's name. Someone gets their face ripped off by, like, a rabid chimpanzee at some point.
Oh, good. I mean, at least they're accurately representing the chimpanzee community.
Yeah. But so it's not that I don't like books where the protagonist is also kind of an antagonist.
Yeah.
In so many people's lives. But I just... I just can't. And especially one thing that was kind of always coursing through my mind, and maybe we can get in a little more depth to this at some point, is that I know how many people, like, love this book.
Totally. Absolutely.
And how many people dress up as the film version of Alex and his Droogs for Halloween. And it's like, cool. You know he rapes 10-year-olds, right?
Here's the have you seen the movie?
I have seen bits and pieces. I watched, but I have not seen the whole movie, and I know they have... I don't think... They did not include the part with the 10-year-olds, I don't think, in the movie.
Here's the thing. And I don't want to talk about the movie too much because I want to... I'd want to judge the book on its own merit and, like, not include it, but it's so much a part of, like, the story of the book, and, like, Anthony Burgess's Burgess his like view of it, that it's impossible not to. They did include those rapes, and they included those moments, both when Billy Boy and his gang have a little girl that they're about to assault, and then the two girls that he picks up at a record store, but they make the record store girls his own age, and he's a lot older than he is in the book, or at least appears a lot older. And then the woman that Billy Boy's it's a woman that Billy Boy's gang is about to assault, and that doesn't make it like not rape, but they changed those elements. So if people did just watch the movie and didn't read the book, or just read the American version of the book that didn't have the last chapter, like, child rape is not a part of the character, which doesn't make the character good. I would just like to stress that. But it's not an element in the American paradigm of this book.
Still rapes people.
Oh, no, again, I do not want it to seem like I'm like, woo, Alex. That's a thing that I would like to, it's gonna become a, like, really important element of talking about this book, especially because I read the version with the last chapter and an introduction by the author that directly addresses this.
See, that's the problem when you have a version so old.
Yeah. But it's so cool because so many people, like, that is the version of the story that they got, that it's, like, really cool that just by happenstance that this is how we both experience the book, that, you know?
Yeah. I will also say, one thing I noticed, having watched clips from the movie, not the whole movie, I know, blasphemous, is that, so apparently, yeah, so you said they aged up the girls, but yeah, they aged down the old lady.
Yeah.
To have, like, that really kind of uncomfortably comic death scene for her.
Yeah.
In the book, she is extremely old. Like, she's hitting him with her cane.
Yeah.
And she has way more cats.
Yeah.
That was an oversight, and the cats attack him, which I was like...
It's actually a lot more of a struggle in the book.
Yeah.
But also, him killing her is accidental in the book. He's literally just trying to fend her off. Still murder. Cool motive, still murder. But in the movie, it's a lot more like he's having fun with it. Yeah. Yeah.
I will also say, re the cats, I do want to share this part that I was like, that is pretty fucking funny, is the fact that when he goes back to his house after everything that happens to him, in the, with the Ludovico technique.
Yeah.
All of his stuff has been sold, and it's like for reparations for the victims, and he's like, what do you mean? And she's dead. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, someone had to feed her cats.
Yeah. The government,
and I'm like,
took his
cool,
stuff to
this
feed
weird
the cats.
Dystopian government in this, like, weird 90s Britain is like, but who will look after the cats? Man, no one gives a shit about cats here.
But those cats, though.
But those cats, somebody's gonna take care of the cats.
Man, okay, before we get too far from it, can I just, like, address how different this book is with this introduction that I have and the last chapter?
Okay.
So first of all, I did try to read this when I was in high school, or at the very least, like, early college. And I stopped reading it because I fucking hated it. I had watched the movie, and I really like the aesthetic of the movie, but I'm like a sucker for weird wording. Again, I actually listened to the comedy of Russell Brand, and I was a really big fan of Juno when it came out. I still think that Jennifer's Body, also by Diablo Cody, is, like, an underrated horror movie, apart from one scene, but I'm, like, really swayed by words most of the time. So, like, when I watched the movie, I was like, I like the slang. I'm not a huge fan of the movie, apart from certain visual elements. Although I did, for a short time, have, like, a music project with a friend of mine that we called Lovely Ludwig.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was, like, a cappella harmonies that were all about, like, super dark. So, whatever. It's fine. But when I went into reading it this time, I was like, oh, cool. It's a novel for edgelords, and I'm just gonna have to, like, swallow that. But, like, from the intro, this version is a treat, because the introduction is just Anthony Burgess fucking hating his own book. He's like, I think that I shouldn't have done the slang. I was trying to create emotional distance between the reader and the subject matter so that it wouldn't be just like a pornographic description of violence. And I think that worked to a degree, but I think it was overwrought. I think that I'm doing too much telling and not enough showing. I think it's too preachy, but like so much of his hatred of his own book is based around what happened with the American publication of it, which is that he was really, really intentional of having 3 parts, each with 7 chapters, to reach 21 chapters, because 21 was like representative of adulthood and maturity, which is all tied in with the last chapter and where it's all supposed to end. And his American publisher was just like, I will publish this if I can remove the last chapter. And he hated that, and he said it turned it into like a fairy tale or folklore instead of an actual novel, because without the last chapter, it's just a like monument to people don't change, which is the entire point of the book, is being like, maturity, growth, people change naturally. Like, it is part of human nature to evolve. And without the last chapter, you do not get that even a little bit. And that American version is what the movie reflected. That's like the version of it that Stanley Kubrick worked from. So that's exactly the same. So that means that like his book is completely defined by an editorial choice that he fucking hates. And it was one of his early books. And so it's an incredible introduction. And the last part of it, I'm just going to read the last paragraph. Readers of the 21st chapter must decide for themselves whether it enhances the book they presumably know or is really a discardable limb. I meant the book to end in this way, but my aesthetic judgment may have been faulty. Writers are rarely their own best critics, nor are critics. Quod scripsi scripsi, said Pontius Pilate when he made Jesus Christ the King of the Jews. What I have written, I have written. We can destroy what we have written, but we cannot unwrite it. I leave what I wrote with what Dr. Johnson called frigid indifference to the judgment of that 0.000000001 of the American population which cares about such things. Eat this Swedish segment or spit it out. You are free.
Okay.
Right? Like, Anthony, are you doing okay?
I will also say, he did write this book in 3 weeks, I think, was what I have read.
That was not included in the introduction, but I'd believe it.
Yeah. He wrote it at, like, insane feverish pace.
Yeah. But yeah, so the last chapter, just to fill you in, Bridget, Alex gets bored of violence, and like he has a new gang that he's running with, and he's the leader of it, but he's really bored of it, and his gang, when he goes to put money on the table, makes fun of him because he's clipped a picture of a big fat baby out of a newspaper and is carrying it around with him. And he gets really embarrassed about it and is like, I'm going home for the night, do whatever you want. And runs into, like, a tea house where he finds, like, the last member of his old gang from the beginning of the book, Petey. And Petey is with his wife, Georgina. And it's an incredible scene. I love it so much because Alex is dressed up in the newer style of the Droogs, and Pete and his wife are just like normal folks having a tea, and Alex is talking in that slang, and Pete's wife just starts making fun of him. It's just like, who talks like that? What is this? Did you used to talk like that, Petey? Jesus. And basically Alex realizes that, like, he wants to have a family. And he wants to try to protect his son from, like, the destruction that he felt that he had to sow into the world, but he knows that he can't protect his son from that, just like his father couldn't protect him from that, because it's just youth. And it has this sort of, like, ending of, like, well, I've changed. I'm not the same Alex I was at the beginning of the book, but think about that, Alex, sometimes for me. Oh, my brothers. Bye. Amen and all that shit. And that's the end of the book.
Huh.
Very different.
Yeah, extremely different than the last line in mine. Hang on. I was cured all right.
Yeah.
That's extremely different.
And for context, when he says I am cured all right, it's because he can fantasize about beating and raping people again, and it's fun. So,
yeah.
Two different vibes for where people end up in life from our good friend Tony Burgess. But yeah, so my experience of the book was kind of knowing that I was gonna get a different kind of closure. And I think that knowing that really changed how I read it. And I was like, it's complicated because the book is, like, wholly about violence and depicts violence from, like, a gleeful and I think kind of charismatic character who at a certain point you are supposed to sort of feel sorry for.
Yeah, no, yeah. Alex is a very charismatic protagonist.
Yeah. The book is very charismatic.
Yes.
I think that Alex is not. I think he thinks he is. But the book definitely is. You are saying a thing, and I totally interrupted. What's up?
I don't remember now. No. He's charismatic in that way that, like, teens think they are, I guess.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, you think you're being hot shit right now. And you're kind of super not.
Yeah. Like in the beginning of the book when he tries to tell his friends, like, no, I'm totally the leader. And they're like, sure, buddy. And he's
sure
like,
you are.
But I'm a big tough guy. Also the fact that he's fucking 15 at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like, you find out at the end of the first part that he's 15 and you've just spent quite a few pages watching him murder and rape people. And you're like, oh, well, shit. Apparently all dystopian novels what the fuck? Apparently all dystopian novels are still all about teens. Because Fahrenheit 451, weird. Predicated on a teen. The host is essentially, certainly adolescent in its core, but begins with a teen, certainly. This one, about a teen. He's 18 by the end of the book.
It's gonna be teens for the next little bit.
It's gonna be teens all the way down. That's just what we have to...
Teens all the way down.
to accept about the genre that we've chosen. Oh, can I also... I made a special note of this just for you, my good friend Bridget.
Yes, my good friend Caitlin.
So, at a certain point in the beginning of the book, Alex calls his droog... Are we gonna use the slang?
I mean, I think we should. Okay. Mainly because Devotchka is a really fun word to say.
Yeah, Devotchka's great. Tietza's also a delight. And also, like, let's
Starry.
Not act like... Yeah, Starry. Horror show is great.
Horror show is fantastic. Smek is to laugh.
Yeah, I'm not... It reminds me too much of, like, Kick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I will say, so I enjoy, some of the slang is Cockney, which I love. Cockney rhyming slang, especially is it sharp for a woman?
Yeah,
is really good because that is
some old Zach with his sharp.
It's a certain word.
Yeah,
that it's Cockney rhyming slang for.
Yeah,
which is an unkind word. That is also very fun to say.
Oh, just say it.
It's cunt.
What? Wait, sharp is cunt?
Yeah.
Is it
sharp?
Cunt.
It's blunt.
Sharp. Okay. Well, we've broken that seal on the podcast. I guess I did. I know that I okayed it. Okay.
You brought this on yourself. Anyway,
I did.
There's a very good line in the show I was just in. That's she's like, "Then prove it, you cunt."
You're right. That's incredible. That's what a line.
They're talking about, she's like, "I can do a bicycle kick."
Oh.
I bet it's at home on your stupid fucking trampoline. I can do a fucking bicycle kick.
Anyway, yeah, great words. Phenomenal words. My favorite is not part of the slang, which is called nadsat. It's a combination, like you said, of Cockney and Russian. But my favorite phrase, because it sounded like something that we would have called each other in college, is domeless wonder boy.
Oh, I did love that.
It's so good. I, put the book down, started my notes on that page, because I was like, domeless wonder boy! I'm using that on the daily now. Also, it's kind of... Oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, it took me a long time. I was like, oh, okay. And I guess there are certain words of slang that are not in the glossary in the back, and they're not in the glossary on Wikipedia, that you're just kind of expected to know.
I do
including
think you
Black and Suds.
Yeah, that one was a little...
Which I was like, what is this? It's beer.
Yeah, I mean... You pick it up.
Yeah.
After a while.
I mean, I've heard of a black and tan, but I've never... That's like a certain mixed drink.
Yeah.
Of two kinds of beer, which, ew, y'all nasty.
Okay, let's not be too judgy.
I'm sorry.
Let's allow people their terrible drinks.
Why are you mixing beer? Gross. Beer and cider. That's the one that really gets me, where it's like
I mean, I think an Irish car bomb is like beer and that you drop something into.
Yeah,
right?
if it's a depth charger, but that's of like a liqueur. This is like two kinds of disparate beers.
It all just tastes like not as good as bread to me.
Bad bread.
It tastes like bad bread. Like, if I could eat a piece of bread and be drunk, that would be my ideal beer. But,
I mean, if
God
you eat
has
enough
not yet
rum
delivered
cake,
that to me.
If you eat a heavily soaked enough rum cake...
Wait, actually?
You can get there.
That's genuinely... Okay. My mom is not going to be stoked that I've broadcast this to literally any person, let alone a podcast. But, my parents accidentally got me and my sisters a little drunk on that when I was a baby. They made a rum cake at Christmas and they just couldn't taste it at all in the cake, and so they kept adding more glaze to it until they could, like, what they felt like was like just a little snippet of it, just, you know, hitting the palate. And then they gave us each a little piece of it because they were like, well, it's pretty much cooked out. And then they were like, man, they're really riled up. What's going on? Oh, no. And, they got us all glasses of water and put us to bed. And everything was fine. And I was an honors student. Everything worked out. But, you know.
I mean, there are still people who, like, rub whiskey on their baby's gums. So.
Yeah, they're hardy. They bounce back.
Yeah. Kids are fine.
That's the official position of this podcast. Kids, they'll be fine.
Kids, they'll be fine.
Yeah. God, what the fuck were we talking about?
We were talking about the slang.
Yes.
The slang in this book. Yeah.
Very satisfying.
It took me about halfway through his stay in prison, where I was like, all right, I think I've got the hang of like 80% of this stuff. Re the slang.
It was very funny in prison when he had a cellmate who was older than him by like a decade or so, and he was just like, yeah, his slang is so stupid, am I right? Who talks like that?
Yeah.
This is a very like slyly funny book, especially about the language that it uses and the sort of cockiness of Alex. That's all. I would just like to put forward, I found this book very funny in parts.
So one part I enjoyed a little bit was the parts with the prison chaplain.
Yeah.
Because so my dad has worked in the religious personnel department of the military for basically my whole life. And also, I always forget about this, and then I'm like, oh yeah. So my great uncle was a prison chaplain.
Huh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Church service runs in the family. You ain't gonna catch my dead ass anywhere near a fucking church unless it's to... Well, that's not true. I've done a lot of religious studies. It's all from an academic standpoint, though.
Is your little bro leaning anywhere towards the ecumenical?
No.
Church of Lego.
Church of... It's now... It'd be more Church of Xbox, or,
Okay.
Oh, he does have an embarrassing new hobby that, we were like... Caleb's 15, listeners. He's about to turn,
Gotta watch
16.
that age. That's the Clockwork age.
Yeah, he's about to turn 16. Terrifying. He's gonna be learning to drive next year. But we've been begging him, like, Caleb, please pick up a hobby. Find something to be literally anything to be interested in other than playing video games, because he doesn't really do Lego anymore. He's painting Warhammer miniatures.
Hey, let's not shit on that hobby. I have a lot of friends who paint Warhammer miniatures, and they are very impressive sometimes. I mean, I should say, like, sometimes in the larger world, I think my friends are very good at it, so I think I'm always like, oh, good work. But I am washing my hands of calling this an embarrassing hobby.
It's just that, like, of all the nerdy hobbies he could have picked, not only is it one that is not, like, super social.
Yeah. It does have that disadvantage. Oh
it's
my
like,
god, I just
cool.
had $1 million idea. Bridget.
Yes, Caitlin.
Okay. Let us go, you and I, and spread a franchise out upon this country like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us do this. So, paint night establishments, but for Warhammer figurines.
So, like, a Color Me Mine.
Just like...
But for small pewter figurines that
I don't
you
know
can
what Color
play
Me Mine is,
D&D is. Color Me Mine is is like one of those, like, paint establishments from the
like
90s that were everywhere. Yeah, Paint and Sips. Ooh, that's the drunk ones. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about specifically. Get people, like, wine drunk and give them, like, very small figurines to paint. It will be hilarious, first of all. But also, I think people could get really into that.
Wine, may I suggest mead drunk?
Like, you're right, but I don't want to do it. You know? I don't want to
Have
go
it
down
be
that
an
mead
offering.
road.
But it's a good road.
It's a good...
Mead
Can
and
we
cider?
do ale and cider I could get behind.
Ale and cider with a couple of meads on the menu.
Look, we'll include the mead. I just don't want it in the literature, Bridget. I don't want that out there.
You have to provide a fanciful experience.
I know. We can do mulled wine.
Can we have nights where, like, there will also be, like, Celtic musicians playing?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's gonna be the whole thing, Bridget. There will be decadent tapestries on those walls. This is as far away from talking about A Clockwork Orange as we could possibly be. I am so sorry. Okay.
I mean, first of all, TM.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If anyone does this, get ready for the law brigade to descend.
I've already written this idea down, put it in an envelope, and mailed it to myself.
I mean, like, it's waiting in the mailbox, but yeah. See, you're hearing this weeks after we've recorded it. There's no way anyone's gonna steal that out of your mailbox. We got this, Bridget.
We got this.
By the time this comes out, we'll be Warhammer millionaires. Wine and Warhammer nights. Wine.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well.
Also, is that
good
one
to know
in
that
Olympia?
My finances are set for the rest of my life.
Also, quick cue, there was an ice cream based painting place in Olympia. Is that one still there? Or did that shut down?
I mean, if the painted plate better fucking be there, because that is one of my favorite establishments in Olympia. And if that town let it lie fallow in my absence, I'll be furious.
Y'all, if it's still there, go check it out. They have very good ice cream options.
Okay, so that place is like maybe a couple blocks away from the bus stop. And one time, like the depot. And one time, our dear friend Tasha took me there for my birthday because she knows that I love it so much, and she wanted it to be a surprise, so she blindfolded me. And I am so distrusting that it took almost an hour to walk 2 blocks because she would tell me there was nothing in front of me, and I would still move so slowly. So slowly.
Tasha does love to pull pranks, though.
I mean, but it was so clearly not a prank, and I did trust her, but I couldn't make my body trust it. I couldn't ropes course it for those brief moments. Anyway, again, a whole other tangent, a whole other thing. Let's get back to this book that we read. Oh man, what are some elements we can get into? The thing is that I don't want to spend too much time on any particular thing because it's all terrible. Like, the book is great, all of the events are terrible.
I mean, I will say that it feels like I was just doing the thing where, like, you flick past a bunch of pages.
Mm-hmm.
Some nice ASMR. Hang on. Ooh.
You got him. Got him right in the sensory meridian.
It seems like in a lot of books about, especially, like, teenage males, there's always a dim.
Yeah.
There's always a dim.
Here's the thing, they're always all dims, but there's only one that everybody recognizes as one.
Yep. Where he's just extra, usually slovenly.
Yeah.
Like, he does, like, he's gross, he can't keep himself clean, but he's also the strongest one of them and could, like, take over very easily, like he did in this book when he became a cop.
Oh my god. That shit was terrifying.
That was a very good twist. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, there's one thing about the book that I really liked is that it had a very symmetrical structure, like to the point where it was completely unbelievable, but literarily, which is totally a word, very interesting. And so it showed all these crimes that he did against individuals, certainly, but just because of the ideological bent of the book, viewing it as like crimes against society, that then once the government sort of steps in and takes like free will and the choice to be good away from him, it then like shows societal retribution reflecting his violence back at him. And so like the individuals are justified in like seeking justice, but it shows that like society doesn't seek justice. And by having his like the former rough and tumble droogs of his youth becoming cops and behaving exactly the same way, it highlights like state violence in a really effective way, I thought. But also, just gonna lightly touch on this. Alex like definitely got raped in that scene, right?
Which scene? They definitely raped him.
Yeah, because he like says that he's not gonna describe what happened, but he uses the same language about how he feels afterward. that he used when talking about when he would assault people. And, like, he definitely, like, describes them putting their clothes back on. And it's just like, holy fuck with all this shit. It's just a lot. It's a lot, this book.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, actually, yeah, he fully does say what happened to him. I'm not going to use it. I mean, yeah, there's a word in there that is not a good word to use. And it's not a fun word, like cunt.
Yeah. Long live.
It's not a word to be reclaimed. But I just laid there blanked and shagged. Or at the very least,
not by us.
Yeah, not by us.
Yeah.
Not by us gals. But I just laid there blanked and shagged.
Yeah.
And
then he goes immediately from there to the house of someone that he raped. And it's just like, what? Like, I could deal with, like, talking more about the events of the book if it revolved less around just wholly sexual assault.
Yeah.
Just it just kind of seems like every major
like beating has a, like, it's like there's like the first one where they beat up the cigarette shop owner and his wife.
Yeah. And they, like,
he's like,
expose her.
Expose her breasts, and they're like, I don't have time to rape this lady. I have to get back to cover my alibi. Yeah. Like,
and when they attacked the old man on the street with his books, they, like, made him walk home naked. So that's still, like, sexual humiliation.
Yeah, sexual humiliation they do. And then even, like, in the prison when there's, like, the new guy in their cell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he attempts some assault on Alex, and also, like, the first night that Alex is in prison, or at least in jail. It's when just he's walking to assault.
It's so much. It's like,
and I understand. Here's the thing: there's like this horror movie that I refuse to watch called a Serbian film.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna watch it ever.
No, I will never.
Because I heard about it, and I get it. And there's this whole argument that all of the fucked up stuff that happens in it is supposed to be reflective of war crimes that happened during the Serbian War. And, like, I understand that sentence. I am not at all connected to those terrible things, and I think they deserve their story to be told in whatever way the people who are affected by it want to have it told. But I feel like in that particular instance, perhaps the message got obfuscated by the method of delivery. And I feel like for a lot of people that is also probably true of A Clockwork Orange. Like, I was able to get past it to, like, see what he was trying to say about violence and about controlling other people. But I feel like it's just a lot. And maybe not always, like, the most necessary. And the thing that got me, it's the one element of the introduction that I was like, I appreciate your honesty, I guess. But I'm not as much a fan of these particular thoughts in your introduction. I'm gonna find it super fast. So this is a part of the introduction. It seems priggish or Pollyannish to deny that my intention in writing the work was to titillate the nastier propensities of my readers. My own healthy inheritance of original sin comes out in the book, and I enjoyed raping and ripping by proxy. It is the novelist's innate cowardice that makes him depute to imaginary personalities the sins that he is too cautious to commit for himself.
Yeah.
So, like, I get that he's basically being like the violence inherent in Alex, or like violent urges that should be checked in all people, and I'm not gonna say that I don't, but, like, you don't have to say that you enjoyed raping and ripping by proxy. So, I don't know.
We get it, you like alliteration, buddy, but, gross.
So, like, I think that there is definitely a reading of this where it's basically like, yeah, that sexual violence is a useful metaphor, especially if you're talking about a dystopian thing where it's about power over people's bodies and vulnerabilities and things like that. I think that it can be deployed as a useful metaphor. I read it from that perspective because I'd read the intro and I was like, well, I can't have that sentence in my head while I'm reading because gross, Anthony. So that's just a thing. That's just an element, Bridget.
Do we want to move on to our little sections?
Yes, we should.
So, I feel bad for you, by the way, because you seem to be getting the short end of the stick with, because I'm doing the Could Be Possible segment this week, and you're doing you're doing Amazing Sweetie, and I'm sorry, you got, you know, the book that is hard to necessarily find a sweetie in.
Here's the thing, there is one person, but it's in the final chapter, so you didn't meet them. Real quick, before we go into our sections, because I just had a thing I remembered I wanted to say.
Yes. To
get the same sort of arc as Alex goes through, at least in the version of the book that I got, there is a film you can watch. It's a very good film, and it is not visually graphic. It does graphically describe violence, but I'm just saying, I think it's very worthwhile, and I kept thinking about it while I was reading the book. It's called Scars, and it should still be on Vimeo if you look it up, but it's, the director did all of these interviews with a guy who had a very violent youth and, like, reformed, and he asked if he could turn it into a movie, but basically what he did is he just cast someone else as the guy being interviewed and recreated the interviews, and didn't, like, depict them in any way other than just a guy telling these stories. And it's Jason Isaacs, and it's incredible, and it's a lot. So maybe have like a fun, maybe like watch Jane the Virgin afterward, I don't know, but
sandwich it between 2 episodes of We Bare Bears.
Yeah, but it's very good, and it's very reminiscent of Clockwork Orange, and I thought that would be an interesting thing to throw out there. Now, Bridget, you have some research for us.
I do. You know, I mean, it's pretty easy. So I'm doing the segment Could Be Possible. Da-da-da-da. I don't know. Doing a little musical sting there for myself.
Can we, wait, I had another thought about this section.
Yes.
Do you think it would infringe Burger King's copyright if we just chomped, hey, it could happen, from the 90s?
I mean, I'm down. They're too busy with their horrific King mascot. And
yeah.
I mean, Burger King isn't even relevant anymore.
Let's just do it until we get a cease and desist.
They brought back they did the mac and Cheetos thing, and everyone was like, gross, whatever. Ugh. We've forgotten about you now.
I did not know about that. And
You did not know about the mac and
Cheetos? I'm harrowed, Bridget.
They're cheese puffs made out of mac and cheese covered in, like, Cheeto dust.
Ugh. No.
Yeah.
Please tell me about what horrifying dystopian things are possible in our society, because mac and Cheetos I can't handle.
So, let's talk about the Ludovico technique.
Yes.
Yeah, Natch, of course. Come on. It's in so much media, but it is also... The thing is like, it does work and it doesn't work. So the whole idea behind the Ludovico technique is that they strap them down, wrench open those eyeballs, and
prop them peepers open, and show him extremely violent films, which I was like, I feel like they were probably, like, the way it's described, where there is no noise and they're playing music over it, and like the way that he's like, how would they get any actors to do this and to agree to this? I don't know if, like, I don't think it's almost like, it's like maybe this was captured on like
he didn't like CCTV.
Yeah, I feel like, especially because he went into that being like, these people are like innocent dummies who think they can change me, and then he's like, well, everything's fine. I'm just watching movies. So they wouldn't actually show me footage of terrible things happening. They're the government. And I think that those are two connected moments of naivete for Alex. I definitely think they just filmed fucked up stuff happening.
Yeah. So, so the Ludovico technique is basically, it's, aversion therapy turned up to 11.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also like conditioning. A very famous case of classical conditioning is the little Albert experiment. If you took any kind of psychology class, you will have heard about this. I took IB psychology. I barely passed.
Was this with the monkeys?
This was not with the monkeys.
Oh.
This was with...
That's a stupid question if you're not right. That's
Yeah.
the dumbest thing
Are you talking
say.
about the one where they gave them the cigarettes?
No, I'm talking about the one where they, it's more about attachment and like parenting, but they like made a mother figure and they loved it more than the feeding machine, and then they put needles in the mother figure and they still kept trying to love it even though the needles were hurting them.
Yeah, psychology
anyway,
is like a really gross and unethical thing a lot of the time.
All right, Tom Cruise. Easy.
No,
that was actually horrifying.
Yeah, and this is also a very unethical experiment. So it was where Dr. John B. Watson and his graduate student assistant and future wife, Rosalie Rayner, did an experiment with a baby that they had no permission to, like, take. It was either assumed that either they took this baby out of, like, the daycare at the hospital when it would come in, or that they, like, bullied a nurse into letting them use her child.
Oh my God!
With the threat of firing her.
Fuck! What the fuck,
yeah.
Bridget?
And so this baby was 9 months old. So that's a little baby, very little baby.
Yes,
and what they would do is they would put the baby in this like on like a cot type situation, and they'd give him like this very nice little white lab rat, very nice soft little white lab rat. And every time he would touch the lab rat, they would basically bang like a sharp metal instrument against a sharp metal surface to make this really terrifying, horrifying noise.
Jesus.
And they did this, and they conditioned him to be terrified of the rat.
I have a lot of feelings. The first one before anything else happened was, okay, you've left a rat alone with a baby is your first problem.
It was a nice rat. It was a nice rat. Not all rats are mean.
My apologies
but here's
to
the thing.
Rats everywhere.
Here's the thing. It was not just rats he became afraid of.
Oh no.
Anything white, soft, and fluffy and furry.
No. That encapsulates a lot of really nice things for babies.
Afraid of rabbits and dogs and certain blankets and like cotton balls.
Oh my God.
He would start screaming.
Holy fuck. Okay.
Now, so the identity of this baby is still kind of unknown. There's two theories. It was either this one child who died at a very young age and who had like serious medical problems because of like
anxiety,
fear and anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
that makes sense.
The other theory, which is the more likely one, is that the kid grew up, he died when he was like 80, but his family have said that like he was always afraid and uneasy around furry animals and things that were like furry.
Those are some of life's greatest things.
Some of life's greatest joys. So, that kind of conditioning therapy, you would take a negative external stimuli to create an association with something that is traditionally positive, thought of as positive in the eyes of the person who's trying to get aversion to it. Mm-hmm. there are certain ways of doing aversion therapy that are with, like, drugs that are actually really good for alcohol and drug abuse. Specifically alcohol addiction, can use, naxaltrone, naltrexone, and disulfram. I'm fucking those words up. But if you read them, you'll go, oh yeah, I've heard of those, because you've probably heard of them on, like, a crime show or, like, reading a book or something. They're very well-known drugs that create nausea as soon as it's combined with alcohol.
Oh, shit.
So basically, it induces, like, a really, really, really bad hangover feeling, like, as soon as the alcohol hits your bloodstream. Yeah. And so it kind of it creates this negative association and this negative effect, so then people won't want to drink. And obviously, you get therapy help too.
Yeah.
But that is one helpful tool in battling alcohol addiction. Now, there's what the aversion therapy that Alex goes through is a little more similar to.
Yeah.
Is conversion therapy that was like towards members of the LGBTQ community for an extremely long amount of time.
Yeah.
In A Clockwork Orange, he's given drugs to make him nauseous as he sees these images and hears the music, so he feels like intense nausea. Whereas in conversion therapy, you would have electrodes attached to you, usually, especially because it was mostly men going through this. Women, they just shipped you off to a hospital and they hooked electrodes to you everywhere and just shocked the crap out of you all the time. But for men, it was like, oh, well, you can recover. And so they would attach electrodes to their genitals and show them a series of visual stimuli, and when it was one they wanted you to react negatively to, you'd get a shock. So cool. For homosexual images, you'd be shocked. And there was I saw an article written up about how there was, like, you would get it at a doctor's office. And then eventually it was like, you could administer this therapy to yourself. So there was a one you could take home and use at home. That's, like, basically a slide projector and, like a TENS unit.
Jesus with this.
I know. I would recommend, if anyone is interested in learning more about this, I would check out the Sawbones episodes. They did during Pride Month this past year, they did a 2-part series on conversion therapy and the declassification and the original classification of homosexuality as a mental illness. It's a very good series.
This is like one of those instances where I think, or probably I would say our first instance where, like, the shit that we have done and continue to do to each other in real life for realsies is worse than the book we read.
Yep.
Because Alex at least was hurting other people, not just existing. So cool. Humans.
So that's my bit on aversion and conversion therapy.
I do not want to equate these two things at all. So, like, this is a separate, like, we have closed one door. We're in a different room now.
We've walked down the hallway, around the corner.
There are,
we went to the bathroom first, washed our hands.
We, like, we've checked our phones. We've, like, taken a minute for ourselves. So this one time, I had an acquaintance of mine, like, took advantage of, like, a Groupon offer that was for, like, hypnosis. Like, just, like, a hypnosis demonstration, for, like, being done with like cigarettes and weight loss and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was basically just a person being like, hey, we're going to do like a big group hypnosis session and just kind of show you what it's like. And then we're going to do for like a couple different problems that are common that people tend to have. And the first half hour was just like showing you what the relaxation, basically they just brought this Groupon, and then they were like, it's a 2-person Groupon, and I don't want to go by myself. I feel really weird. Will you go with me? And I said, sure. And so the first half hour was just like this sort of hypnosis relaxation thing. And then the second half hour was just like a couple different samples. And the first one they did was for weight loss. And like, I've seen television, so I thought it was going to be like, I'm moving forward in my strong body. Like, I thought it was just going to be like The Secret style affirmations. And it turned out it was like aversion hypnosis.
Oh, yeah, that is a thing that exists.
But they didn't tell you about it. They just did it. So, like, I had a really nice time in the first half hour, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm, like, genuinely super relaxed and, like, blissed out right now. Like, I'm not going to start clucking like a chicken if someone tells me to, but, like, having someone very gently talk to you for half an hour about how relaxed you are is pretty relaxing. And, like, now I know I could probably just watch an ASMR video and get that same effect. But
get those crinkle tinkles.
Yeah, get the tingles going. But then they did the exact same voice. It was the exact same relaxation technique. And I was like, yeah, more of the same. Cool me down, calm me out. All of these words going together perfectly, exactly how I intended to say them. But then we got real relaxed, and she was like, and you see a cookie in front of you, and you pick it up, and it smells so good. You break it in half, and the chocolate is just melting and like gooey. It's so good. And then you realize, oh my God, there are worms in it. There are maggots in it. It's disgusting. You feel nauseous. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, what the? And like, it was so jarring. And that was someone just telling me that cookies are gross. That's all. I didn't think about that until you were like, different methods that people do for aversion therapy. And I was like, who does that? And I was like, oh shit.
Me. I've
like
done that.
Real common. That's a common enough thing that like you could go down to the local county courthouse, and in a meeting room there are 30 women sitting in a circle being told that like cookies are an abomination, and you will actively feel nauseous anytime you see one. That's all. So I would say, oh yeah, it's my section now, huh?
It is.
Oh, I almost forgot about it. So you didn't meet this character, but my favorite character in the whole book was, I think her name's Georgina. I'm pretty sure it's Georgina. She is Petey's wife. I'm gonna make sure. Yeah, Georgina. And basically, she's the only female character in the whole book that, like, isn't actively being assaulted, beaten, bullied, or manipulated at any point in her scene. Which is just it's not why she's the sweetie, but just a breath of fresh air on that count. But that scene where she makes fun of Alex, like she's not actively making fun of him, she just can't stop laughing at the way Alex talks. So like, the slang is funny at a couple different points in the book, but never this funny, because as the reader, you're so immersed in Alex's world. It's really easy to make the inference that Alex's culture is just youth culture in general, and that only adults aren't in on this slang. And like, the slang is called nadsat, but that's also just the word for teenagers. So it's like implied. You just make the assumption that that's just youth parlance. But at the end of the book, in this final chapter, I think Petey and Georgina are like 20, and Alex is 18. So, like, they're not that far apart in age, and it's very clear she has never heard this shit before, and it's the funniest thing. Like, the funniest thing to her. And she's, like, very sweet. She's trying to be nice, but she cannot hold it in. And, like, seeing someone his age have zero reference point for how he talks and finding it funny and, like, not even a little bit intimidating after this whole book is my favorite thing. I love it so much. Because also in the back part of the book, like, it's hilarious how much he does not know what's going on with having feelings. Because I thought the last chapter was going to be super boring because I knew off the bat it was going to be him, like, losing enthusiasm for his lifestyle and just showing someone kind of be like anchorless like that isn't usually very dynamic. And I thought, even though, like, as a human being, cool that you're not interested in committing horrible violence anymore, but as a reader, there was a very real chance it would just come across as, like, boring and preachy. But, like, he's carrying around a picture of a fat baby in his wallet with this mystified vibe in his heart. Like, this means something. And he gets tired of trying to beat people up, and he's like, I'm gonna get a cup of tea. Why can't I stop listening to love songs? It's hilarious. It's delightful. It's like this sappy ending as told by this teenager who's embarrassed to realize that he's a marshmallow, and I fucking adore it. And it's just, all of those things are just driven home, and Alex becomes this, like, ridiculous, abashed character, and a big part of that is Georgina just being like, Pete, did you talk like this before we met? Like, who is this person? What is going on? And she, like, fully knows his history, and she just gives no shits. And they're like, well, we gotta go. We're going somewhere where there's, like, party games and wine. And have a nice life, bro. And they just go off and are normal people. And so, Georgina, sweetie, you're doing a great job. Bringing it home. Just clinching Clockwork Orange for me. So that's real.
So final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Do you want me to go first, or would you like to go first?
I will go first.
Okay.
Knowing about the last chapter and the intro does help a little bit for me. Sorry, I was turned away from my mic there for a second. That's going to happen in this audio sometimes, people, is I will turn away or things will happen, weird audio stuff.
We're in rooms and exist as physical bodies in space. I think they'll forgive us.
You'd be surprised. No, but knowing about the additions, or rather the original intent, definitely helps me frame the book differently. I will say there are a lot of interesting thoughts on the importance of it being your choice to be good, and to or to be good and not do bad.
Yeah.
Basically, that, like, good is a baseline that we exist on, and to go below that is our own choice. And it's a choice we have as creatures with free will, which I found very interesting. And knowing the end where it's like the cycling out of the bad is something that I'm a little, I'm annoyed at American publishers for taking away, but surprise, surprise, it was a fucking American publishers. What do you expect? So, those are my final thoughts on the book. Yeah.
I think this one's a thinker, Bridget. I feel like the version that I read, it comes back to the idea put forward in the title a lot more of, like, a Clockwork Orange, because that was a Cockney slang phrase, was, well, isn't that just queer as a Clockwork Orange, just to represent, like, a strange thing? But in the intro and a little bit scattered throughout the book, Anthony Burgess talks about his interpretation of that being an orange is something natural and sweet and full of juice and life, and to scoop out the innards of that and replace it with a clockwork mechanism is unnatural and wrong. And there's a lot there about, like, the inherent free will of people and the inherent passion, like, connecting the violence that Alex commits with his love of music, and, like, the aversion therapy taking away his ability to listen to music, things like that, sort of equates human nature with inevitable violence, but a violence that's, like, necessary to create the choice to do it or not to do it. And I don't... He says in the intro that he thinks he's a little too preachy about it in the book, and I think that there are moments where he definitely gets a little too, like... As a reader, you're a little bit like, okay, Anthony, like, put it in the subtext, maybe? But I don't think that he's necessarily super clear on what an answer is for, like, protecting people but allowing for free will to happen without, like, creating a dystopian government or society. And I think part of that is that he expresses in the book that he uses Alex as a writer to enjoy committing violence, but there's a not inconsiderable amount of crossover between Anthony Burgess and the character in the book who is writing a book called A Clockwork Orange, which is just very straight up a manifesto about free will. And that character is also named Alex, which Alex takes note of. And that character wants Alex dead by the end of the book because he's a guy that Alex committed violence towards, upon. And so he's inhabiting both sides of this. And in the final chapter, he describes youth as also being a mechanism that replaces the natural fruit innards of the orange. And youth is a natural state of being. So I think he's a little bit muddled on it, which is fair, because it's not exactly a thing we have a definitive answer to. So it feels like it's trying to put forward this idea that, like, trying to regulate people into being moral is wrong, but that essentially we should just, like, encourage maturation. Like, we should encourage people to be grown up, and we should be a grown up society. So through my perspective, reading the whole book as intended feels like a pretty strong call for, like, this paradigm that society fucking up is inevitable, but we should try to be better, which, given how extreme the violence is in it, is, like, a pretty mild call to action. But I also kind of like it, because it seems like most dystopias are, like, along one extreme or the other. And I feel like this book is basically just being like, yeah, people are fucked up, but I think they're essentially good, and maybe we should just try to encourage that. Which just feels like a really human place to be coming from. So it's a lot, and I don't think I'm going to reread it too much, but I think it's a charismatic book that is worthwhile if you can, if you want to deal with the content. And I really liked it. Sorry, I had a lot of feelings about this book, I guess.
I know.
Sorry.
I mean, we will get to that in the next, I think the next two books are ones I have a lot of feelings about.
Yeah, I know that I really like the next one. Would you like to intro what that's going to be?
I think, is It's Feed by M.T. Anderson, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Once again, oscillating between traditionally considered grown-up literature and YA.
Teen books. I will say about that book, to get everyone excited about it, it was one of my staff recommendations I made when I worked at the bookstore.
No higher accolade could be awarded.
Ooh la la. Also featured in my recommendations were Carly Rae Jepsen's Emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Emotion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I mispronounced it. And oh gosh. I had a bunch of books in the kids section, including Worm Loves Worm, which if you have never checked out that picture book, it is a delight. It is a delight that says, hey, you know what? Fuck your gender binary.
I'm a worm.
No, literally, that's the book.
Fuck your gender binary. I'm a worm. I feel that. That could be me.
Me. I'm that.
Cool. Well, have a lovely rest of your week, guys. Stay strong. Humans are good. Fuck the state.
I like that.
Okay, good.
Okay.
We'll keep workshopping, but good.
We'll workshop our outro.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Could Be Worse. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing our podcast on Stitcher, Google Play, or the iTunes Store, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're trying to make sure we're out there as much as possible, so if you don't see us on your favored podcast venue, please let us know. You can check out our website at couldbeworsepod.com, follow the podcast on Twitter or Facebook with the handle @couldbeworsepod, and check out more from your humble and loving hosts on Twitter and Instagram at the handles @magnesiumqueen for Bridget and @Caitlin Obum for me, your good friend Caitlin Obum. Immense thanks and credit to musical artist Dexter Britton for making his inestimable instrumentals Wonderland and Waking Up available under Creative Commons over at the Free Music Archive. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.